She thought her lies would go unnoticed. She believed her destructive rage would have no consequences. But when the truth came to light, the courtroom turned against her. Fraud, deception, and property destruction, her plan to ruin her ex-husband collapsed in front of everyone. And the judge? He didn't just deliver justice, he humiliated her for the world to see.
My name is David Mitchell, and I never imagined that the woman I once loved would become my worst nightmare. Sarah and I had been married for 12 years, built a life together in Springfield, Illinois, raised two beautiful children, and owned a successful small business. When our marriage ended 2 years ago, I thought we could handle the divorce civilly. I was wrong. The first sign something was terribly wrong came on a Tuesday morning in March. I arrived at my office, a small accounting firm I'd built from the ground up, to find the windows shattered and cheater spray painted across the front door. My heart sank as I walked through the debris-covered entrance, seeing overturned desks, destroyed computers, and thousands of dollars in equipment ruined. But the property damage was just the beginning. Within weeks, I discovered Sarah had been systematically destroying my life from the shadows. She'd contacted my clients, spreading lies about my professional integrity. She'd filed false reports with the Better Business Bureau, claiming I'd embezzled funds. Most devastatingly, she'd somehow gained access to my business accounts and had been forging my signature on checks, transferring money to accounts I'd never seen before. I sat in my destroyed office that morning, surrounded by the remnants of everything I'd worked for, and realized Sarah wasn't just angry about our divorce, she was trying to completely annihilate me. The woman who once promised to love me through sickness and health had become a calculating destroyer, and I had no idea how deep her deception would go. As I picked up pieces of a family photo from the floor, one of the few personal items I kept at work, I made a decision. I wouldn't let her win. I wouldn't let her lies and manipulation destroy not just my business, but my ability to provide for our children. That day, I called my lawyer and began documenting everything. I had no idea that Sarah's web of lies would eventually become so complex that even she couldn't keep track of them all. The road ahead would test every ounce of strength I had left, but I was determined to expose the truth, no matter what it cost me. The next few weeks felt like living in a nightmare that refused to end. Every day brought new discoveries of Sarah's systematic campaign against me. My lawyer, Jennifer Walsh, had seen messy divorces before, but even she was shocked by the scope of what we uncovered. "David, this isn't just vindictive behavior," Jennifer told me as we sat in her downtown Springfield office, surrounded by boxes of evidence. "This is criminal fraud on multiple levels. She's committed forgery, theft, defamation, and destruction of property. We're not just looking at a civil case anymore. This could involve federal charges." The forgery was the most sophisticated part of her scheme. Sarah had somehow obtained copies of official business documents and had been practicing my signature for months. Bank statements showed over $47,000 had been transferred from my business accounts to various shell companies she'd created under false names. She'd even opened credit cards in my name and maxed them out, leaving me with debt I never knew existed. But perhaps the most insidious part was how she'd manipulated our mutual friends and neighbors. Sarah had created an elaborate story about how I was hiding assets and refusing to pay fair child support. She'd shown people doctored financial documents that made it look like I was living lavishly while she struggled. Many people in our small community believed her without question. I remember walking into Henderson's hardware store, a place where I'd shopped for years, and feeling the cold stares from people who had once greeted me warmly. Mrs. Patterson, who used to ask about my kids, turned away when she saw me. It was clear Sarah's poison had spread far beyond just the legal system. Hey, touching stories, family. As we dive deeper into David's story, I'm curious, those of you dealing with similar situations in your communities, what city has surprised you with how quickly rumors can spread? Drop your city name in the comments below. Sometimes the smallest towns can have the biggest impact on these personal battles. The hardest part was explaining to my children why Daddy's office was broken and why some people at school were asking them strange questions about money. 8-year-old Emma asked me directly, "Daddy, did you really steal money like Mommy said?" The innocence in her eyes as she asked that question broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. I knew then that this wasn't just about money or property, it was about my reputation, my relationship with my children, and my ability to rebuild my life. Sarah had calculated that destroying me financially would be enough, but she'd underestimated how far I would go to protect what mattered most. As Jennifer and I prepared for what would become a landmark case in our county, I realized that the truth, no matter how painful the process of revealing it might be, was the only weapon I had left. 2 months into our investigation, we hit what Jennifer called the jackpot. Sarah had been so confident in her deception that she'd gotten sloppy with her digital footprint. Our forensic accountant, Mark Chen, discovered a pattern that would ultimately become the foundation of our case. "Look at this," Mark said, pulling up bank records on his laptop. Every fraudulent transaction happened during specific time windows, always between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., always from the same IP address. And here's the kicker: she was accessing your accounts from her own home computer. The digital trail was damning. Sarah had been using a keylogger program to steal my passwords, probably installed during one of the many times she'd visited my office during our divorce proceedings under the pretense of picking up personal items. She'd been inside my computer systems for months, watching, waiting, and planning her financial attack. But the most shocking discovery came when we examined the shell companies she'd created. One was called Mitchell Family Recovery Services, designed to look like a legitimate debt collection agency. Another was Springfield Asset Management LLC. She'd used these fake companies to justify the transfers, creating invoices for services that never existed and payments for debts that were never owed. The property destruction had also been more calculated than I'd initially realized. Security footage from neighboring businesses showed Sarah's car parked outside my office at 3:17 a.m. on the night of the vandalism. She'd worn dark clothing and a baseball cap, but her distinctive walk and the car's license plate were clearly visible. What made it even more heartbreaking was discovering that she'd involved her sister, Lisa, in the scheme. Text messages we subpoenaed showed Lisa expressing concern about the plan. "Sarah, this has gone too far. What if David finds out? What about the kids?" But Sarah had been relentless, responding, "He deserves this for what he did to our marriage. He's going to pay for everything." The everything she referred to wasn't infidelity or abuse. Our marriage had ended because we'd simply grown apart, wanted different things, and couldn't make it work despite years of trying. There had been no dramatic betrayal, no hidden affairs, no financial impropriety on my part. Sarah's fury stemmed from the fact that I'd been the one to file for divorce, and in her mind, that made me the villain deserving of complete destruction. As we compiled evidence for the upcoming court date, I found myself struggling with conflicting emotions. Part of me felt vindicated that we were finally uncovering the truth, but another part of me mourned for the woman Sarah had once been: the loving mother, the supportive partner, the person I'd thought I'd spend my life with. How had love turned into such calculated hatred? The answer, I was beginning to understand, lay not in our shared past, but in Sarah's refusal to accept that our marriage was over. Instead of grieving and moving forward, she'd chosen revenge. As word spread through Springfield about the upcoming court case, I found myself living in a divided community. Sarah had spent months building her narrative, and many people weren't ready to abandon the story Abe believed about me being the deadbeat ex-husband who'd hidden assets. The isolation was crushing. My children came home from school asking why their friends' parents didn't want them playing together anymore. Emma's best friend, Sophie, was no longer allowed to come to our house for playdates. When I asked Sophie's mother, Christine, about it, she looked uncomfortable but said, "David, until this legal stuff gets sorted out, I think it's best if we keep some distance." My business suffered tremendously. 3 major clients terminated their contracts, citing concerns about ongoing legal issues. The Springfield Chamber of Commerce quietly asked me to step down from the small business committee I'd served on for 5 years. Even my barber, Tony, who'd cut my hair for a decade, seemed uncomfortable during our appointments, making awkward small talk instead of the easy conversation we'd always shared. But the most painful isolation came from my own extended family. Sarah had reached out to my siblings, my parents, and even my grandmother, sharing her version of events. She'd shown them the same doctored documents she'd used in the community, painting me as someone who was hiding money while she struggled to care for the children. My mother called me one evening, her voice strained with confusion and disappointment. "David, honey, Sarah showed us the bank statements. I don't understand what's happening, but if you're having financial troubles, you know we'd help. Why are you making things so hard for her? having to explain to my own mother that the documents were forged, that the woman they'd welcomed as a daughter-in-law for over a decade was systematically lying to destroy me, felt surreal. The doubt in her voice when she said, "But why would Sarah make all this up?" cut deeper than any legal brief or financial loss code. Jennifer warned me that this was part of Sarah's strategy. "She's not just trying to win in court," she explained. "She's trying to make sure that even if you're vindicated legally, you'll have nothing left to return to. No community support, no business reputation, no family trust. It's psychological warfare." The stress was taking a physical toll. I lost 15 pounds, developed insomnia, and found myself constantly looking over my shoulder. Every phone call could bring news of another lie Sarah had spread, another relationship she'd poisoned, another bridge she'd burned on my behalf. But in those darkest moments, I held on to one truth: my children deserved to know their father wasn't the monster their mother was painting him to be. Whatever it took, however long the legal battle lasted, I would see this through. The courthouse date was approaching, and with it, the chance to finally tell my side of the story under oath, where lies would have consequences and truth would have power. 3 weeks before our court date, Jennifer and I met for what she called our war council. The conference room table was covered with evidence, bank records, security footage screenshots, forensic computer reports, and witness statements. Looking at it all laid out, the scope of Sarah's deception was staggering. "Here's what we know she's going to do," Jennifer said, organizing our documents. "Sarah's attorney, Michael Brennan, is going to paint this as a vindictive ex-husband trying to criminalize normal divorce disputes. They'll claim the business account access was legitimate because you'd shared passwords during the marriage. They'll say the property damage was emotional distress, not criminal destruction, but we had prepared for these defenses. The keylogger evidence proved premeditation. Sarah had deliberately stolen my new passwords, change after our separation. The fake companies she'd created required substantial planning and intent to defraud. The timing of the transactions, always in the middle of the night, showed consciousness of guilt. Our witness list was strong but painful. Mark Chen would testify about the forensic evidence. The neighboring business owners would present the security footage. My assistant, Carol, would explain how Sarah had gained access to the office under false pretenses. Even my mother, despite her initial doubts, had agreed to testify about Sarah's manipulation tactics. The most difficult preparation involved coaching my children for possible testimony. Judge Harrison had indicated he might need to speak with Emma and 10-year-old Jake in his chambers to understand the impact of the situation on them. Jennifer worked with a child psychologist to help them understand they weren't choosing sides, they were simply telling the truth about what they'd witnessed. "Remember," Jennifer told me during one of our final prep sessions, "Sarah's going to try to make you look like the aggressor. She claimed she was scared, that she was protecting the children, that everything she did was defensive. Stay calm, stick to facts, and let the evidence speak." I practiced my testimony dozens of times, but I knew the real test would be facing Sarah across that courtroom. We hadn't spoken directly since the day I'd filed the charges, communicating only through lawyers and court documents. I wondered if she truly believed her own lies by now, or if she knew exactly what she'd done and simply didn't care. The night before court, I sat in my apartment. I'd had to move from our family home as part of the divorce and wrote letters to my children, just in case. I wanted them to know that everything I was doing was to protect our family's future, to ensure they could be proud of their father's name, and to show them that truth matters even when it's difficult. I also found myself thinking about Sarah, about the woman I'd fallen in love with in college, about the mother who'd stayed up all night when Emma had pneumonia, about the partner who'd helped me build my business from our kitchen table. Where had that person gone? How had love transformed into such destructive hatred? Tomorrow, I would finally get my day in court. Tomorrow, the truth would have its chance. The morning of the trial, I arrived at the Sangamon County Courthouse 30 minutes early. My hands were shaking as I adjusted my tie for the 5th time. Jennifer met me at the security checkpoint, her expression serious but confident. "Remember, David, today is about facts, not emotions. Let the evidence tell the story." Judge Robert Harrison's courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, but the weight of the moment felt enormous. As I took my seat at the plaintiff's table, I saw Sarah enter with her attorney. She looked polished, professional, wearing a conservative navy dress that projected an image of the wronged, struggling single mother. For a moment, seeing her again, After months of legal battles, I felt a pang of the old familiarity. Then I remembered the destroying office, the forged documents, the lies told to our children. Judge Harrison, a stern man in his 60s with gray hair and piercing blue eyes, called the court to order. His reputation in Springfield was legendary, fair but unforgiving of deception, thorough in his examination of evidence, and absolutely intolerant of games or manipulation. This case, Judge Harrison began, involves serious allegations of fraud, forgery, and property destruction. I want to be clear from the outset. This courtroom deals in facts and evidence, not emotions or speculation. Counsel, present your cases accordingly. Jennifer stood for her opening statement, and her voice carried clearly through the silent courtroom. Your Honor, what we have here is not a case of divorce emotions run amok. This is a calculated, months-long campaign of criminal fraud perpetrated by the defendant against her ex-husband. The evidence will show that Sarah Mitchell systematically stole over $47,000, created false companies to launder money, destroy property, and attempted to destroy Mr. Mitchell's reputation and livelihood through an elaborate web of lies. When Michael Brennan rose for Sarah's opening, his approach was exactly what Jennifer had predicted. Your Honor, my client is a devoted mother who found herself abandoned by a husband who controlled all the finances during their marriage. When she discovered hidden accounts and questionable business practices, she took action to protect herself and her children. What the plaintiff calls fraud was simply a woman trying to secure what was rightfully hers. I felt my jaw clench at the lies, but Jennifer had prepared me for this. The truth would come out through testimony and evidence, not emotional reactions. Judge Harrison looked directly at both parties. I'll hear the evidence and make my determinations based on facts, Mr. Mitchell. I understand you wish to testify on your own behalf. Standing up felt like the most important moment of my life. Yes, Your Honor. As I walked to the witness stand, I caught Sarah's eye for the first time that day. What I saw there surprised me, not defiance or anger, but something that looked almost like fear. For the first time, I wondered if she was beginning to realize just how much trouble she was in. Taking the witness stand felt surreal, like stepping into a movie about someone else's life. Judge Harrison's clerk administered the oath, and as I swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, I felt the weight of months of preparation and pain settling on my shoulders. Jennifer began with basic questions: my name, occupation, marriage history. Then we moved into the heart of the matter. Mr. Mitchell, please describe your relationship with the defendant during your divorce proceedings. I took a deep breath. Your Honor, Sarah and I had agreed to handle our divorce amicably. We have 2 young children, and I believed we both wanted what was best for them. I had no idea that she was planning to systematically destroy my life. Can you tell the court about the first incident of property damage? As I described walking into my destroy office, I noticed Sarah's attorney taking notes, but Sarah herself staring at the table. She wouldn't meet my eyes. The damage was extensive, Your Honor. Broken windows, destroyed computers, overturned furniture. But what hurt most was seeing cheater spray painted on my door. Sarah knew there had been no infidelity in our marriage. She knew that word would cut deepest because it wasn't true. Jennifer guided me through the financial evidence methodically. Dank records, forged signatures, fake companies. Judge Harrison asked several clarifying questions, his expression growing more severe as the scope of the fraud became clear. Mr. Mitchell, the judge said, you're alleging that the defendant created false companies and forged your signature on multiple occasions. How did you discover this, Your Honor? It started when clients began calling me about payments I'd supposedly made to companies I'd never heard of. When I investigated, I found that someone had been accessing my accounts in the middle of the night, transferring money to these fake businesses. The forensic analysis showed it was all coming from Sarah's IP address. When Jennifer asked about the impact on our children, my voice nearly broke. Emma asked me if I was really a thief. My 8-year-old daughter asked me if I'd stolen money from Mommy, Your Honor, explaining to your children that their mother is lying about their father. There aren't words for how that feels. The cross-examination was brutal. Michael Brennan attacked my character, my business practices, even my parenting. He suggested I'd driven Sarah to desperation through financial manipulation and emotional abuse. Mr. Mitchell, isn't it true that you controlled all the finances during your marriage? We made financial decisions together, but yes, I handled most of the bookkeeping because that's my profession. And isn't it true that you filed for divorce without warning, leaving my client with no access to resources? That's absolutely false. Sarah had access to all our joint accounts until the legal separation, and I've paid every penny of court-ordered support. But Judge Harrison was watching Sarah during this exchange, and I noticed his eyes narrowing as she whispered frequently to her attorney. Something about her behavior was clearly bothering him. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt drained but relieved. The truth was out there now, under oath, in the record. Whatever happened next, I'd finally told my story. When Sarah took the witness stand, the entire energy in the courtroom shifted. She'd chosen to wear a simple black dress with minimal makeup, clearly trying to project an image of a victimized single mother. But from the moment she began speaking, something felt off. Michael Brennan led her through her prepared testimony smoothly. She claimed I'd hidden assets, controlled her access to money, and forced her to take desperate measures to protect our children. Her voice quavered at the right moments, and she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue when describing her fear of my retaliation. I was terrified, she said, looking directly at Judge Harrison. David had cut off my access to everything. I didn't know how I was going to feed my children or pay the rent. When I found those hidden accounts, I thought they were money he was hiding from the divorce settlement. But then Jennifer stood for cross-examination, and everything changed. Mrs. Mitchell, you testified that you discovered hidden accounts. Can you tell the court when you made this discovery? It was sometime in February, I think. Jennifer pulled out a document. According to your own attorney's filings, you claim to have discovered these accounts in January, March, and April in different motions. Which date is correct? Sarah's composure flickered. The discovery was ongoing. I found different accounts at different times. I see. And these accounts you discovered, can you explain how you accessed them to determine they contained hidden assets? David had given me the passwords during our marriage, all of them, including the passwords he changed after your separation in December. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. He used similar passwords. Judge Harrison leaned forward. Mrs. Mitchell, did you use software to obtain your ex-husband's new passwords without his knowledge? Your Honor, Sarah looked at her attorney, who couldn't help her here. Jennifer pressed on. Mrs. Mitchell, let's talk about Mitchell Family Recovery Services. Can you tell the court what services this company provided? It was It handled debt collection. For whom? Who were their clients? I don't remember exactly. That's odd, because you're listed as the company's president. You created this company in February and used it to transfer $23,000 from your ex-husband's accounts. What debts was it collecting? I watched Sarah's face as she realized the web of lies was collapsing. She'd been so confident in her deception that she hadn't prepared for detailed questioning about the fake companies. Judge Harrison interrupted. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you create false companies for the purpose of stealing money from your ex-husband's accounts? The question hung in the air. Sarah looked at her attorney, at me, at the judge. Finally, something snapped. He deserved it. She shouted, her carefully constructed victim persona cracking completely. He left me. He threw away our family. He deserved to lose everything just like I did. The outburst shocked everyone. Judge Harrison's expression turned thunderous. Mrs. Mitchell, are you confessing to the court that you committed fraud? Her attorney was frantically whispering to her, trying to contain the damage, but Sarah was beyond reason now. I'm not the criminal here. He's the one who destroyed our family. Judge Harrison's voice cut through her hysteria like a blade. Mrs. Mitchell, you will compose yourself immediately, or I will hold you in contempt. Do you understand me? The courtroom was silent except for Sarah's ragged breathing. In that moment, everyone present understood that her lies had finally caught up with her. After a brief recess to allow Sarah to compose herself, Judge Harrison returned to the bench with an expression I'll never forget. His usual judicial composure had been replaced by barely contained outrage. I have presided over family court for 18 years, he began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. In that time, I have seen the worst of human behavior during divorce proceedings. I have seen parents use children as weapons, spouses hide assets, and families torn apart by greed and vindictiveness. But rarely have I seen such a calculated, systematic campaign of fraud and deception as what has been presented in this courtroom today. Sarah sat rigidly at the defendant's table, her earlier outburst having revealed her true nature to everyone present. Her attorney looked defeated. Knowing there was no way to recover from her admission, Judge Harrison continued, "Mrs. Mitchell, your testimony today has been a masterclass in perjury. You have lied under oath repeatedly, shown no remorse for your criminal actions, and demonstrated a complete disregard for the truth. Your claim that you were protecting your children is particularly offensive, given that your actions have traumatized them and destroyed their sense of security." He turned to the evidence spread before him. "The forensic evidence is overwhelming. You installed keylogging software to steal passwords. You created false companies to launder stolen funds. You forged signatures on legal documents. You destroyed property in a calculated act of revenge. And when confronted with this evidence today, rather than showing remorse, you shouted that your victim deserved it." I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness watching Sarah absorb the judge's words. This was the woman I'd once planned to grow old with, now being systematically dismantled by her own lies. "Mrs. Mitchell, I am ordering you to immediately repay every penny you stole, $47,382.16 plus interest and legal fees. You will serve 6 months in county jail, followed by 2 years of supervised probation. You will complete anger management and financial responsibility courses. And given your demonstrated willingness to lie under oath and manipulate others, I am awarding sole physical custody of your children to Mr. Mitchell, with supervised visitation for you until you can demonstrate that you pose no threat to their emotional well-being." The custody ruling hit Sarah harder than the financial penalties. She stood up, tears streaming down her face. "Your Honor, please, they're my children too." Judge Harrison's response was swift and final. "Mrs. Mitchell, you forfeited your right to equal custody when you chose to wage war against their father using fraud and deception. Children need stability, honesty, and parents who can be trusted. Until you can demonstrate these qualities, your children are safer in their father's primary care." He turned to me. "Mr. Mitchell, while I sympathize with what you've endured, I want to be clear that these children will need therapy and support to recover from the trauma of this situation. I'm ordering family counseling and regular check-ins with child services to ensure their emotional needs are being met." As the gavel came down, ending the formal proceedings, I felt an overwhelming mixture of relief and exhaustion. Justice had been served, but at what cost to our family? Sarah was led away in handcuffs, and our children would have to live with the knowledge that their mother was a convicted felon. The truth had won, but victory felt more complex than I'd imagined. 6 months have passed since that day in Judge Harrison's courtroom, and life has slowly begun to find a new normal. Sarah is serving her sentence, and while she writes letters to the children regularly, our interactions remain limited to supervised visitation once every 2 weeks. Rebuilding my business has been challenging but rewarding. Word of the trial outcome spread through Springfield quickly, and many of the clients who had distanced themselves during Sarah's campaign of lies have returned with apologies. The Springfield Chamber of Commerce not only reinstated my membership, but asked me to speak about business ethics and fraud prevention. The hardest part has been helping Emma and Jake process everything that happened. Family therapy has been invaluable. Dr. Rebecca Martinez has helped them understand that their mother's actions came from her own pain and poor choices, not because they or I did anything wrong. "Daddy," Emma said to me last week, "why did Mommy lie about you?" It's a question I've struggled to answer honestly, while still protecting their relationship with their mother. Sometimes, when people are very hurt and angry, they make very bad choices, I told her. Mommy was angry about our divorce, and instead of dealing with those feelings in a healthy way, she chose to try to hurt me. But that doesn't mean she doesn't love you. My relationship with my extended family has healed as well. My mother called the day after the trial, her voice thick with emotion. "David, I'm so sorry we doubted you. Sarah was so convincing, and we just couldn't believe anyone would go to such lengths to deceive people." The experience taught me several crucial lessons that I want to share with anyone who might face similar situations. First, document everything. If I hadn't started keeping detailed records from the moment I discovered the first signs of Sarah's deception, we never would have built such a strong case. Second, don't try to handle complex fraud alone. The forensic accountant and digital investigation experts were essential to uncovering the full scope of Sarah's crimes. Third, prepare for the emotional toll. The legal battle was exhausting, but the social isolation and family stress were equally damaging. Professional counseling wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. Most importantly, Never let someone else's lies define your truth. There were moments when I questioned my own memories, wondered if I really was the villain Sarah painted me to be. But the evidence doesn't lie, even when people do. Today, my children and I are building a new life based on honesty, stability, and healing. We've learned that families can survive even the most devastating betrayals, and they're committed to truth and supporting each other. To our Touching Stories community, thank you for following David's journey with us. If you're dealing with similar challenges in your area, what city are you in? Share in the comments below. You might find others who understand exactly what you're going through. Sarah's lies ultimately became her downfall, but they also taught all of us the power of truth, the importance of perseverance, and the possibility of rebuilding even after everything seems lost. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones that teach us who we really are. The truth, as painful as it can be to pursue, will always be worth fighting for.